It happened in front of hundreds of guests gathered beneath the bright afternoon sun, where generations of aristocrats celebrated the anniversary of a family estate. A proud young heiress looked a hard-working single father in the eyes and declared that a man with no noble blood could never stand beside her family. The crowd nodded. The little girl holding her father's hand lowered her head in silent heartbreak. No one imagined that less than a year later, the same father would legally purchase the very castle her grandfather had spent his life restoring, and the woman who had humiliated him would discover that true legacy had never been written in blood, but in character. If you believe kindness is stronger than pride, forgiveness is greater than revenge, and everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community. Every town has a family everyone talks about, and in the rolling countryside of northern England, that family was the Ashcrofts. Their magnificent stone castle overlooked green hills, ancient oak trees, and fields that had remained in their care for centuries. Tourists admired its architecture, historians praised its preservation, and locals spoke of the Ashcroft name with a mixture of admiration and distance. The castle itself had become more than a home. It was a symbol of status, heritage, and old traditions that refused to disappear. The current face of the family was 29-year-old Genevieve Ashcroft, a polished, intelligent woman who had grown up believing that every generation carried the responsibility of protecting the family's reputation. Her grandfather, Alastair Ashcroft, had raised her with stories about honor, sacrifice, and duty. Unfortunately, somewhere between those lessons and the praise she constantly received from society, Genevieve confused dignity with superiority. She believed kindness was admirable, but only when it came from people of equal standing. Miles away in the same county lived Rowan Mercer, a widowed father raising his 8-year-old daughter, Elsie. Rowan never inherited wealth, titles, or family estates. He inherited something less visible but infinitely more valuable. His late father had taught him honesty. His late mother had taught him compassion. His wife, before losing her battle with illness, had taught him that love survives grief whenever someone chooses to keep giving instead of giving up. Every weekday morning began with sunshine pouring through the kitchen window as Rowan prepared breakfast while Elsie completed her school reading. They laughed over burnt toast, watered flowers growing in cracked clay pots, and left the little cottage with smiles that disguised years of quiet hardship. Rowan worked as a restoration carpenter, repairing historic buildings, churches, libraries, and aging homes. He loved preserving history because he believed every scar told a story worth saving. When the Ashcroft Foundation announced an open community celebration at the castle to honor local craftsmen who had contributed to regional preservation projects, Rowan received an invitation because of his outstanding restoration work. He considered declining. Large social gatherings made him uncomfortable. But Elsie had never seen the famous castle, and her excitement convinced him. The celebration unfolded beneath brilliant afternoon skies. Music floated through the gardens while local families admired handcrafted exhibits. Rowan spent much of the afternoon explaining woodworking techniques to curious visitors. His humility attracted genuine admiration from artisans and historians alike. Everything changed when Elsie wandered toward an exhibit displaying old family portraits. Fascinated, she innocently asked Genevieve whether people without famous ancestors could ever belong in a place like this. The question was simple, the answer was unforgettable. Genevieve smiled politely before replying loudly enough for nearby guests to hear that some families carried centuries of refinement while others simply admired it from outside. She added that bloodlines existed for a reason and that certain legacies could never be purchased or earned by ordinary people, no matter how talented they were. Several guests laughed softly. Elsie looked at her father with confused eyes. Rowan gently squeezed her hand and quietly thanked Genevieve for her opinion before walking away without anger or argument. What Genevieve never noticed was that her grandfather had witnessed everything from a nearby terrace. Alastair said nothing during the event. But disappointment settled deeply across his face. That afternoon became one of the hardest memories Rowan carried home. Elsie asked during the drive whether they truly were beneath other families. Rowan parked beside a peaceful meadow before answering that he explained that people often inherit money, land, and famous names, but nobody inherits goodness. Every person must build that for themselves. Real greatness, he told her, begins the moment someone chooses kindness even after being treated unfairly. Elsie nodded, although tears still rested quietly in her eyes. Life moved forward. Months passed beneath countless bright mornings. Rowan accepted larger restoration contracts across the country. His reputation spread because architects trusted his craftsmanship, museums praised his precision, and private investors admired the integrity with which he completed every project. Instead of chasing quick profits, Rowan quietly founded a company dedicated to restoring neglected historic buildings while employing struggling single parents, military veterans, and young apprentices who had been overlooked elsewhere. Investors appreciated both the business model and its social impact. Within 5 years, Mercer Heritage Restoration had grown into one of Europe's most respected preservation firms. Success changed Rowan's financial circumstances dramatically. It never changed the way he greeted strangers. It never changed the lunches he packed for Elsie. It never changed the habit of personally thanking every employee before leaving each worksite. Meanwhile, trouble slowly surrounded Ashcroft Castle. Maintenance costs climbed, tourism declined, unexpected legal disputes drained family resources. Genevieve fought desperately to preserve appearances, borrowing money against the estate while insisting everything remained under control. Only her grandfather knew the full truth. One sunny afternoon, Alastair gathered Genevieve inside the castle library. He admitted the family could no longer afford the estate. Selling it had become unavoidable. Genevieve reacted with disbelief. She spoke about tradition. He spoke about reality. She insisted that someone worthy must become the next owner. He quietly answered that worthiness had very little to do with ancestry. Within weeks the estate entered confidential negotiations. Several wealthy buyers emerged. Luxury hotel groups wanted commercial development, private collectors planned extensive renovations, foreign investors hoped to divide portions of the surrounding land. Then another offer arrived. It promised complete preservation of the castle, guaranteed public access for educational programs, permanent employment for existing staff, restoration of neglected structures, and lifetime residence for Alastair within the estate. The highest financial offer had not won. The most respectful vision had. The buyer's identity remained confidential until contracts were finalized. On the morning ownership officially transferred, employees assembled beneath another bright afternoon sky in the central courtyard. Genevieve stood beside her grandfather expecting to meet another billionaire whose family name would rival their own. Instead, a familiar vehicle entered through the castle gates. Rowan stepped out. Elsie, now older and taller, smiled beside him. Silence spread across the courtyard. Genevieve stared in disbelief as legal representatives confirmed that Mercer Heritage Restoration had officially become the castle's new owner. The same father she had once dismissed as beneath her bloodline now possessed the legal responsibility of protecting the estate she believed defined her identity. Embarrassment washed across her face. She expected revenge, she expected humiliation, she expected Rowan to repeat every painful word she had spoken years earlier. Instead, he walked toward Alastair first. He thanked the elderly gentleman for dedicating his lifetime to preserving history. Then he turned toward Genevieve. He simply welcomed her to continue visiting the castle whenever she wished because history belonged to everyone willing to respect it. No insults followed. No triumph, only quiet grace. Even more surprising was Rowan's first announcement as owner. The castle would become a public heritage academy teaching restoration skills free of charge to young people from every background. Children from wealthy families would study beside children from working-class neighborhoods. Scholarships would honor forgotten craftsmen rather than famous aristocrats. History would become a bridge instead of a barrier. Alastair's eyes filled with tears. He whispered that Rowan had understood the true purpose of the castle better than generations of its owners. Over the following months Genevieve watched extraordinary changes unfold. Former servants became respected instructors, unused wings transformed into classrooms, gardens reopened for community festivals. Families who had never imagined entering the castle now wandered freely through halls once reserved for exclusive guests. Instead of diminishing the estate's prestige, openness gave it new life. Visitors increased dramatically. Local businesses flourished. The surrounding villages experienced renewed economic growth. Genevieve volunteered reluctantly at first, helping organize educational archives, working alongside ordinary families slowly dismantled assumptions she had carried her entire life. She met widows rebuilding careers, immigrants preserving ancient craftsmanship, single parents studying architecture, teenagers restoring stained glass windows with astonishing patience, none possessed noble ancestry. All possessed remarkable character. One afternoon she encountered Elsie carefully guiding younger children through the castle gardens. The confident young girl explained that flowers never asked where seeds came from before allowing them to bloom together. Genevieve quietly stepped away to hide tears. Later that week she visited Rowan. There were no reporters.no audience.no ceremony, only afternoon sunlight spilling across wooden worktables inside the restoration workshop. With genuine humility she apologized for the cruelty she had disguised as tradition. She admitted that pride had blinded her to humanity. She confessed that watching Rowan treat everyone with equal dignity had exposed how empty her own understanding of legacy had been. Rowan listened patiently, then he smiled gently. He explained that forgiveness becomes meaningful only when someone sincerely changes. He believed she already had. For the first time in years Genevieve felt lighter, not because someone excused her actions, because someone believed she could become better than them. Alastair lived long enough to witness the Academy's 5th anniversary. Thousands of students had completed restoration programs. Historic buildings across Britain stood proudly because graduates carried Rowan's philosophy into every project. Before passing away peacefully one sunny spring afternoon, Alastair left behind a handwritten letter requesting that the castle forever remain dedicated to serving every family regardless of wealth, ancestry, or social status. The letter concluded with a sentence that visitors still read engraved near the entrance. It declared that stone walls preserve history, but humble hearts preserve humanity. Years later people rarely remembered who once owned the castle. They remembered what it became. A place where children learned that dignity could never be inherited. A place where compassion outweighed privilege. A place where forgiveness restored more lives than bricks ever could. Rowan often walked through the gardens during warm afternoons, watching students laugh beneath ancient trees while Elsie, now preparing to become a conservation architect herself, taught younger apprentices the same lessons her father had once taught her. Beside a quiet meadow, she reminded them that the strongest foundations are never built from wealth or titles, they are built from integrity. Before this story ends, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever seen someone judged because of their background, family, or circumstances, only to prove their true worth through kindness and perseverance? Leave a meaningful comment and share the lesson that stayed with you most. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. As the afternoon sun bathed the ancient castle in golden light, its towers no longer stood as monuments to noble bloodlines but as living reminders that the greatest inheritance any person can leave behind is compassion. Rowan never needed revenge to reclaim his dignity. Genevieve never found peace until she surrendered her pride, and the castle finally fulfilled its highest purpose when its doors opened to everyone. In the end, the strongest legacy was never carried in a family name. It was carried in the quiet courage to forgive, the humility to change, and the love to build a future where every heart, regardless of where it came from, truly belonged.